Morning and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. We are speaking this morning with Luanne Donahoe. Luanne is an author, a mother, and a woman extraordinaire. Luanne lost her husband, Paul. He was a firefighter who died in the line of duty. And for those who don't know the story, Paul got very sick. And it was determined that it was through firefighting, whether it was a chemical fire or smoke inhalation. It's never really been proven what, but he became very ill. And that was back when?
He died on October 9th, 2007.
And he'd been sick for 5 years
5
previous
years,
to that.
Yeah.
And scary sick. We're not talking just a little bit of, unwell ease, like dis-ease. He was really not well.
Yeah, he was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And as a result of that, he ended up in hospital 8 times in the 5-year period, 2 neurosurgeries. He was in ICU pretty much every time, intubated once. So he had a rough go, yeah.
Yeah. With a smile on his face the whole time.
Yes.
He was just that kind of guy.
Yep.
Still kept doing everything that he
Very
was supposed
positive.
to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Backyard bonfires where, he'd been on death's door 2 days earlier, and there he is sitting in the backyard.
Yeah.
At the fire and all that.
Markham Fair, volunteering there. Yeah.
Yes, he was a big volunteer for the Markham Fair. Many of the firefighters are.
Yeah, they have been. Mm-hmm. You're right.
Well, that's a tough place for anybody to be.
Yeah.
But for a mom who's got a little boy and you have to wake up in the morning and you have to deal with that child, and life goes on.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, you can't curl up and just pretend it never happened. You have to keep going.
Yeah. And you can't curl up and bawl your eyes out for a year either. You've got to get on with things.
Yeah, and we had all kinds of things happening right after. So I was dealing with all that. We had to claim house insurance. I had a big leak in the house, and it was, we had that. I had issues with his, the money that he was supposed to be getting from his employer. We had issues with, my son had issues with school, and so it was being bullied at school by his teacher, and so we had one thing after another in that first year. So it just seemed to never stop, and so there was really no time to process and finally deal with the grief. Right. Mm-hmm. It took time.
Now, did you end up moving just to clear? I know that you moved away. You were originally in Stouffville, just a little north of Stouffville, and then you moved to a very small town.
Yes.
Smaller than where you were.
Yes, very.
And was that a result of just trying to get a clean slate and a clean start? And
yeah, Paul and I both grew up in Markham, and we were in Stouffville for a number of years. And after he died, I stayed there because Josh, my son, needed that. He needed to stay put in that house. But after about, I guess it was 7 years living there after Paul died, it was enough. It was time to move on. The memories were just too difficult. He died there. And so it was something that we needed. It was a wonderful community. The neighbors, oh my gosh, the people there. I still have friends from there. But it was time to move on. And I moved to a place called Campbellford, and to be on the water. And I look back now, because I've recently moved to Peterborough from Campbellford, and I look back now and I think moving to Campbellford was more about healing, being on the water and healing and taking that time just away from the busyness of life. And
you could be a little bit anonymous too in Campbellford, because you're very well known in the Markham area.
Yeah.
Lots of family. You and Paul both come from big families. Yeah. And then that core has its extended families. I don't think you could ever go to the grocery store and not run into someone you know.
Yeah, you always, it's true.
Which is nice sometimes, but sometimes, you want your space. You need that space.
Well, and we didn't go knowingly that it was to heal, but reflecting back, I realized it was more about healing and just needing that time. And now we've moved to Peterborough, where there's more opportunities for my son, for work, for school, just to kind of get back into the cycle of life again, kind of, So, yeah, it's exciting.
It is.
Change.
It's
Change is
exciting.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you are sitting in Campbellford. And what? You were looking for a job?
No, I had to quit my job after Paul died because Josh needed my attention. We had so much going on. Like I said, I had to focus on that. And I had always wanted to write. And it's interesting because I worked with somebody at Centenary Hospital who had said to me, I remember you saying like 20, 25 years ago how much you wanted to write a book. And I went, okay. So, and we could never really afford me to take courses or anything before Paul died. But after he died, you know what? I'm going to take some writing courses. So I looked online and George Brown College had creative writing courses. So I started with one and I quite loved it. And then I went to the next one and the next one and the next one. I finally went, you know what? I can get my whole certificate. I'm just going to finish it up. But the last course was grammar. No one, I don't like grammar.
I don't know anyone who does except my husband. Jack, if you're listening, Jack is a grammar nut.
Oh, okay.
And actually really likes it, which I just find totally bizarre. But anyway, I can tell you when something doesn't sound right.
Yes.
I can't tell you that it's a past participle, whatever.
No.
But, I find that people who have English as their second language, my husband grew up speaking French and his mother still speaks French to him.
Right.
So you learn a new language, and then the grammar kind of makes more sense because it helps you figure it out. When I learned French, I think I know more French grammar than I do English grammar, which is kind of sad because my French grammar really sucks. So,
So there you go. Yeah. No, grammar was never one of my fortes. And so I hired a tutor for it when I was
really?
taking the course. And
Jack would have done it for free. He loves it.
There you go.
Next time you need the grammar portion, just give us a call.
Go ahead. And so I finished that up and I wrote it. It was ego boosting because I wrote a short story for that for my courses that I was taking at the time, and the tutor was a writer as well, and he read my short story and he was kind of quiet for a minute or two and he went, I said, what is it, like bad? Is it okay? What is it? And he goes, no, it's phenomenal. It's really good. And I went, oh, thanks. So I was as surprised as anybody.
Well, because we're harder on ourselves than other people are, really. I call it the poop pigeon.
Yeah.
And the poop pigeon sits on my left shoulder and poops over everything I do.
Yeah.
Because we are our worst critics, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So I just I did graduate from George Brown College. I was quite proud of myself. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm going to take one of those short stories. I'm going to make it into a novel because that's what I want to do. And it's for me. And I was doing it for me. And so I wrote it after I got to Campbellford. I just finished it up and I thought, you know what? I started investigating. I had a cousin who wrote a children's book and she lives in Uxbridge and she self-published it and put it into some the local stores, and so I said to her, what did you do for that? So she told me, and okay, so I took that information, and then from there I just started investigating into self-publishing and what the advantages were doing that or sending it off to have it published the traditional way. And so I found a publisher in Victoria, BC, who designed my book cover, designed the interior, got the ebook organized for me, and I just self-published it. And I just went for it. I just figured, you know what? Just do it.
That's so brave.
It's a leap of faith.
Were you like shaking in your boots, so to speak?
Yeah, because it puts me outside my comfort zone. Like, I love meeting people, but I don't necessarily love being the center of attention, right? Like, but I love to be out there and I love to meet people. But I also like to hide away.
A large family.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're out there whether you want to or not, but
yes.
then you have to hide away at times and have your you time. And so I thought, well, I don't know what to do. So I just started phoning around and I did some book signings at libraries, and Susie Joyce here in town had the Hardy Artichoke, and she let me have a book signing there. So I did a few smaller book signings. I contacted chapters. They didn't take in local authors. They weren't interested in that at the time. So it was a few years ago that my sister-in-law said to me, oh, you know what? Chapters takes local authors. I just saw a book stand full of them. And I went, really? So I phoned them up and they said, oh yeah, we'll do them. You have to do a book signing first. So I booked a whole pile of book signings at all different chapters and did them all.
And you had to make those phone calls yourself?
I had to, because you're self-publishing, right? And that's the unglamorous part of it. And so I did it, and I did very well, and they commended me. They said you did very well with them. And the fact that they said some authors tend to sit behind the table and just,
twiddle their thumbs.
But I would stand the whole time. I go, oh, hi. And it wasn't always about my book. I mean, I met an older couple who came in and they, oh, is this your book, dear? And I'm going, oh, yes. And I knew it was nothing they'd be interested in. I've been writing romantic comedies, right? And they said, well, good luck with that. And off they went. And the next thing I know, they're behind me looking for a book. And I said, oh, what are you looking for? And she told me, and I went, oh, let me help you look for it. And I found it for her. And she went, well, thank you, dear. And off she went to pay for it. And her husband was standing talking to me. And there was a big, long lineup. The chapters they had a big sale on, and her husband and I were chatting, and I had little Mars bars, and he had one, and I said, fill your pockets, I'm leaving soon, just take them all. And he goes, well, okay, dear. And he does, and his wife comes back and he says, buy her book. And she went, what? And he says, buy her book. So she went, okay. So they bought my book. But it wasn't about them buying my book, it was just about meeting them and talking to them. And I met a couple from Australia that I'm still communicating back and forth with, and they were traveling late, they couldn't buy it, but I sent it to them as a gift, and they ended up in turn sending me a local author's book from Australia. So
isn't that nice?
Yeah, so we still communicate back and forth.
It's all about connection, isn't it?
Yeah, and it didn't start off, it started off about my book because they came and chatted with me,
right?
But it wasn't about me selling my book to them. It was just we made that connection, and so we still communicate. It was great.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So here you are, you venture out to do this project. I mean, most people who say they're going to write a book never do. Mm-hmm. So maybe a third of those people actually put pen to paper. And of that, probably only maybe a tenth of them ever even finish the book. It gets one of those projects, someday I should get back to that. And that someday never happens.
Yeah.
So this is, how did you discipline yourself to actually sit down and write this book?
I just love writing, and it kind of takes you away, and every author has a different way of approaching a story. I just sit down and I just start writing.
You didn't have the story in your head before you started?
Well, I had a short story that I had used for school, but it was it wasn't the beginning, it wasn't the end, it was kind of just slapped into the middle somewhere. I had to develop the story around it. And what I liked about it was I literally will sit at my computer and go, what do I want to happen to my characters today? Do I want them to be happy, sad? I can do whatever I want. And I like comedy, so I decided I was going to do romantic comedies, even though that's not a genre I ever read. Growing
so
up.
Give us a little synopsis about your book. What is it about, the first one? Because I know there's more than one.
Well, there's two, and the second one I just recently did book signings in the spring for. But the first one really just is, it somewhat parallels.
What's it called?
It's called Just Their Luck, the first one, and the second one is called Her Flossom Life. And so the first one just really is about a young woman who ended up ending a relationship and moving to a small town where her sister lives and meeting somebody, and it was not. It's like most romantic comedies, didn't go well, and they have their ups and downs, and eventually it works. But I threw a little bit of a mystery in there too with it. So there's people go, oh, I didn't see that happening. So that was good. It made it more interesting. It wasn't just about the romantic side of it and these two meeting. It was also about her past interfering in with her present. So. And
where was it set?
I just created a small town. Just created it.
Not kind of based on any place you'd ever been?
No, I didn't base characters on anybody either. Nope. Yeah. I used names, but they weren't based on any particular characters. In Her Flossom Life, my second book, it's all completely just... I didn't even use names of people that I know or anything, but yeah. So, but it's fun. I love writing it. I've started a third one. I quite like it's very different. I've started it very different than I have the other two, and I've quite enjoyed it. It's been fun. I love writing, though. And my father was a writer, too, but he didn't write novels or anything. He wrote the As I See It column, op-ed column in The Economist and Sun for, I don't know, 20 years or more. So
The Markham Economist and Son.
yeah, the Markham Economist and
funny?
Son. Yeah.
And I used to write for the Liberal when I was younger.
Oh, did you?
In Thornhill.
Oh, there you go. So you're a writer, too.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It's always fun. I've always wanted to do a children's book.
Yeah, see, and I dabbled in that when I was taking the courses. It's just not my thing. But my cousin, she did that, and she did a great one. So, but she stopped because she became a grandmother. So,
And then she had other things to do.
and she had other things to focus on.
There you go. So your third book now that you're getting used to this, I'm not going
Yeah.
to say that you're getting good at it, because
Yeah.
sometimes authors, their first book is the best book they've ever written, you know?
Well, you know what? My first one, I think my second one's better than my first. I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
because you learn as you go. You get better as you go, right? But I had a great compliment because someone from Markham Fair, who I've known for a long time, she is into suspense and thrillers. But she said, Luanne, I read it because,
It's your
I know
book.
you,
Yeah.
right? And you were so excited about it, I wanted to support you. But she said, I loved it. I loved it. And she said, so I read your first book. Because she said, and I love them both. So there you go. You
There
just
you
don't
go.
know.
That's
Yeah, it was a
great.
nice compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a fellow at the cottage who is a friend of a friend, and spent 2 years at his cottage writing this book, and everybody was all hyped about the fact that, oh wow, there was an author from, I won't even say where our cottage is, and I read it and I hated it.
Oh, no.
I've just been so glad that I haven't run into him, because I didn't want to
So
say, you know what, that book was a waste
Yeah.
of time.
Oh, I had a friend.
For me.
Yeah. No, I had a friend of mine say to me, it was okay. I said, okay, fair enough. Because it's not going to be for everybody.
Absolutely, it's not
And
ever
I don't
gonna be for
expect it to
everybody.
be. I don't expect it to be. So I appreciated the honesty. I said, okay, fine. So, I'm not going to sell you my second book. But she was honest about it. She said, but I read it, but it's not my cup of tea. And I said, oh, fair enough.
Fair
I
enough.
respect that. Yeah.
So the self-publishing thing, it's a really hard struggle, isn't it? Because you really have to do everything yourself from start to finish.
Yeah, and I find the marketing of myself the hardest part of all, because you are, tooting your own horn basically all along. And I'm proud of what I've written. So it's not about that, but that's the hardest part, is to walk out and say, you know what, you should buy my book, and here's why. Right? And that I find really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But-
you don't want to go to the book signing looking like you really need them to buy your book.
No, and again, I'm not invasive at all and so I just but there's a lot of people who've bought it that I didn't know. I have some followers on Facebook now, which is great. And, I had one lady come and she said, oh, I've been following you on Facebook and I came to your first book signing. I came to your second. I wanted to get your second book. And it's nice, right?
That is
You have to
nice.
start somewhere. Not everybody's instant hit. And I'm not saying I am going to be like a huge hit one day, but I'm hoping.
Well, I've heard that now, that sludge pile that they have at the publishing house, where you submit your manuscript, it gets into this big pile. If someone ever reads it, you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a rejection letter, and now sometimes you don't even get the rejection letter, because
No.
nobody's ever even seen it.
Yeah.
But now the publishing houses are looking to the people who are self-published. They look and see how well the book is doing, and they may pick it up.
Yeah.
And then you get the backing of that huge organization behind you, and they do all the marketing, and you don't have to.
Well, yeah, and you don't have to put your money out right away, right? Because it costs you a lot of money to get your cover designed. There's a young lady who designs my cover out in Victoria, and I love what she does. I gave her kind of a rough idea of what I wanted, but she took it from there, and I love everything she's done. I just love everything she's done for me. And I've been complimented at bookstores because they said, people say, the cover is important. It's very
Never
important.
judge a book by its cover, but we all do, don't
But you have to. Yeah,
we
they
do.
do. Yeah.
I scroll through my library listing for my audiobooks, and I go into the library and I'm scrolling through, and I was doing this at 3:00 in the morning because I couldn't sleep last night. But let me tell you, there are certain ones that you don't even stop at because it doesn't visually appeal to me.
Yeah.
So there is a lot to be said for the
Yeah, well, and they
cover
say
of a book.
because, if they don't know you and they're scanning books to see what they want to grab, they're going to scan something that it grabs their attention.
Appeals to the
initially.
eye.
Yeah. And but you know what? So I keep getting her to do it. Jenny is her name, and she's wonderful. She asked me if she could use my book covers in her portfolio as well because she loves them, right? But so you're doing that, then you're putting a lot of money out for the design, the interior design as well. You're putting money out for the electronic version of it. They're putting it onto Amazon for you.com. At the time, in 2015, when I did my first book, Amazon.ca for Canada would not accept your book online unless you were picked up by a bookstore. So and they said it could take months, but I was really lucky because within a couple of weeks, a British bookstore picked it up, and so I was on Amazon.ca very quickly. So I was lucky. So I'm also on Kobo as well. Haven't looked into audio books yet, but I will. But and so now I'm working on my third book, and I'll do and now I'm thinking, should I send it off now to a traditional publisher and see what they have to say first? My son recommended that. He said, why don't you give it a try? Can't hurt, right?
It can't hurt. You've already published it.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to give it to a publisher now. Would you think that would be the route for your third book?
Well, that's what we're thinking. Like, I'm thinking about my third book doing it that way. Yeah. And just giving it a shot. I'll design it. I'll have it designed and everything, but then I'll send the manuscript off and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
So you went and found this publisher. How did you find them, the self-publishing person? You went online or something?
I researched online, yeah. And they're I wanted a Canadian company. So they're a Canadian company, and they're very reasonable. And honestly, they've been so easy to deal with. They're first choice books, and they've been so easy to deal with. I just love them. And so you can pick the paper you want. You have a lot of say in everything. And I know someone who currently is in Ireland, and him and his wife have published many, many, many books, and they self-publish. And he said, it's the way to go because you have full control of your work. You have full control of everything. And when I have my books in chapters, when they sell them, they take 40%. But that's a small price to pay for getting it out there. And chapters have been really good to me. But then I've also got it in local bookstores. I've got it in smaller ones around the area that, I appreciate them doing that as well. And
Blue
getting
Heron
it out.
and places like that?
Blue Heron took my first book in, yes. I haven't been back to visit them for my second one yet, but I will be. And I have it in the Campbellford, the Kerr's bookstore in Campbellford. And yeah, so I get it out there as well because it's not just about the big box stores, right, and the bookstores.
There's so few of the small bookstores left.
There is, I know.
But I used to love going into small bookstores where you feel like you can take your time and look through all the shelves. And
yeah, I love bookstores. My son will attest to that. Like, drop me in a bookstore for an hour or so and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are you going to do a cross Canada tour sometime?
I don't know. I haven't.
Expensive, isn't it?
It is. I haven't thought of that. I had said to a friend of mine in Nova Scotia, I said, you know what? Next time I come visit you, I'm bringing my books. I'm doing a book signing in Halifax.
Why
so
not?
I may do that. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. So that's kind of for my second book. I think I'm going to, because I just recently published it. So I'm still working on it. I've had a few bookstores invite me back to do another book signing because I did them on a Sunday and it's pretty quiet on Sundays to do book signings. So I'm going to go back to Ottawa and Ajax, and they've all been very supportive and they carry my book. And yeah.
Give us a rough idea of just how much it costs to self-publish a book.
It depends on how many copies of the book you've printed up. It varies, but I've spent for the first one, I probably spent about $3,000 initially. And then the second one, similar, probably closer to $4,000 because then you're also working on marketing costs as well. So, yeah. And your business cards and your so it's...
And you don't get paid to stand in chapters and
tote
your books.
No. And I had book marks designed and that type of thing too, right? And you're doing posters and yeah, so it can be expensive. And that's just for maybe 100 books. right? So the first book I published, I printed up about 225 books initially. So actually it would have cost me more than 3,000, but yeah. But you do what you have to do.
Yeah,
and
that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love writing. I don't begrudge it by any means. I go into it quite aware that this is what I'm going to have to put into it.
Yeah, this is what's expected of you in order to get this book out to people to read.
Yeah, and it's not, again, you're not, everyone's not going to be an instant hit like J.K. Rowling, right? But it depends on how badly you want to do this. So I joked around. I was at a fire department dance last fall, and you know what? They said, "Oh, how's your book going?" I said, "You know what? I want it to be a Hallmark movie." I said, that's a pipe dream, I think, but I want that to be a Hallmark movie.
Why not? Stranger things have happened. Yeah. Why not? You got to put it out there, and who knows what'll happen.
That's exactly my thought. I have to put it out there, and that's going to be my goal. I think I could do it.
Why not?
Yeah, because I think my story is interesting.
There you go. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Luanne. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Stay tuned.